When you think of colossal creatures in cinema, Godzilla and King Kong are the titans that usually come to mind. King Kong came into the picture as far back as 1933, introducing the world to giant monster movies. Then came Godzilla in 1954, taking things to a whole new level. With nearly 40 films under his belt, Godzilla is, without a doubt, the king of kaiju movies. But let's not forget, the world of kaiju films is vast and varied, stretching way beyond just these two iconic giants. These movies, often brimming with classic sci-fi elements, added a new dimension to the genre. From destructive dragons to mammoth moths, the range of creatures is as broad as it is imaginative. So, for those of you who feasted on every Godzilla movie and cheered on King Kong, there's a whole world of kaiju films waiting to be explored. In this video, we dive into 13 of the best kaiju movies that don't star Godzilla. So, buckle up, because it's going to be a monstrous ride. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Pacific Rim Franchise. In 2013, Earth gets a surprise visit from Kaiju, these massive creatures from another dimension. How did they reach Earth? Well, not from the sky, but out of a portal called the Breach of the Bottom of the Pacific Ocean, which is similar to the Monsterverse, where the Titans arrive on the surface from the hollow Earth. There was no way that humanity was going to sit back and do nothing, though. They rallied together, forming a resistance called the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps. Their weapons of choice was massive robots called Jaegers, piloted by duos through a mind-melding tech. The lead guy here was Marshall Stacker Pentecost, a former Jaeger pilot turned big boss. Cut to 2020. Brothers Yancey and Raleigh Beckett were piloting a Jaeger to save Anchorage, Alaska from Knifehead, a nasty kaiju. Things go south. Yancey dies, and Raleigh, all traumatized, ducks out of the whole Jaeger scene. Fast forward to 2025, and things are looking grim for humanity. Raleigh, now back in the game, teams up with Mako Mori, a rookie with guts, to pilot an old-school Jaeger. They're humanity's last hope to shut the breach and kick the kaiju out, once and for all. So yeah, I believe the Pacific Rim movies are one of the best kaiju movies in recent times that did not star the mighty Godzilla. The kaiju depicted in these films are simply breathtaking and intimidating. I mean, these are not characters like Godzilla or Kong. These kaiju are more than an event or a calamity personified. If we're talking Del Toro's freaky movie scale, Pacific Rim is more action-packed fun than Nightmare Fuel. It's a love letter to classic monster movies, with giant robots thrown into the mix for extra punch. Think of it as a top-tier monster robot mashup outside Japan, something very unique born in the 21st century monster flick scene. Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, 1995. The Gamera Saga, originally a 60s and 70s Godzilla-esque series featuring a giant flying turtle turning from menace to hero, made a killer comeback in the 90s. First up in the trilogy reboot was 1995's Gamera, Guardian of the Universe. In the movie, a ship carrying plutonium crashes into an atoll near the Philippines, triggering weird events in the region. Scientists, including Naoya Kusanagi, arrived at this atoll and find some ancient bling and a rune-covered slab. But whoops! The atoll shakes, and they're tossed into the ocean, where Coast Guard officer Yoshinari Yonemori spots a massive turtle, or let me change that to supermassive. Meanwhile, ornithologist Mayumi Nagamine is investigating giant bird attacks in the Goto archipelago. She's a skeptic until she finds what looks like evidence of giant birds munching on humans. Her team soon wrangles two of these birds in a baseball stadium in Fukuoka, while the third one bails, only to get taken out by our giant turtle friend Gamera. The other birds escape though. Kusanagi deciphers the runes, telling Yonemori and his daughter Asagi that the turtle is Gamera and the birds are Gauss. Asagi accidentally bonds with Gamera via an amulet, while Kusanagi tries convincing the government that Gauss is the real baddie. They're hung up on Gamera's collateral damage. In another Gauss strike at the Kiso Mountains, Nagamine and Yonemori are in a tight spot trying to save a kid. Enter Gamera, playing hero and offing a Gauss, but one gets away. Meanwhile, Asagi feels Gamera's pain due to their bond, collapsing into a coma after a military strike on Gamera attracts the final Gauss, wounding the turtle. Nagamine and Yonemori learn that Gauss are man-made and breed solo. They theorize that Gauss rose from pollution, and Gamera was built by the ancients to fight them. They bring this to Kusanagi, who's skeptical until he sees the amulet's magic himself. The movie reaches a pretty high-octane climax for a 90s film, but rest assured, you'd like the movie if you're even a mild monster movie fan. Daimajin Franchise. Daimajin movies are another great kaiju movie franchise, a trilogy to be more precise, and the first one A village gets rattled by earthquakes, and the locals think it's the spirit of Daimajin trying to break free from a mountain. Meanwhile, power-hungry Lord Hanabasa and his right-hand man, Samanosuke, are plotting to take over. While villagers pray, Samanosuke goes berserk, wiping out Hanabasa's family, except for his son and daughter, who escape from Samurai Koginta. They end up hiding by the mountain where Daimajin's stone idol is. A few years later, the son, Tadafumi, hits 18, and the village is basically enslaved by Samanosuke. His sister, Kozasa, asks Daimajin for help, and the idol wakes up, shows its real face, and goes on a rampage against Samanosuke and his crew. But Daimajin doesn't stop there, and starts trashing everything until Kozasa's tears calm it down. Next, in Return of Daimajin, Daimajin's on an island in a lake near two chill villages, Chigusa and Nagoshi. But an evil lord from a nearby village wants to take over Chigusa and Nagoshi during their festival. The villagers end up on Daimajin's island, where the bad guys blow up the statue, sending it to the lake's bottom. Guess what? Daimajin wakes up again and unleashes chaos on the landscape and the evil lord. In the final movie called Wrath of Daimajin, an evil lord has captured fathers from a village, forcing them into labor camps. 4 sons of these dads decide to rescue them, crossing Daimajin's mountain. They pay respects to the statue to stay safe, but the evil lord ticks off Daimajin, who springs to life and destroys those disrespecting it. The kids and their dads get a pass while the work camp gets obliterated. As far as his kaiju fighting abilities are concerned, Daimajin hasn't thrown down with other kaiju, but he's pretty much unstoppable. He goes all out against bad guys, dishing out brutal beatdowns. The only thing that can chill him out is witnessing a kind act. When it comes to trashing buildings, he doesn't just knock them over, he bulldozes through them. If there are enemies inside, he'll go the extra mile. Daimajin's also got some divine and elemental powers. Apart from telekinesis, he can snuff out fires with a hand chop, stir up strong water currents, and throw fireballs or blasts from his hands and legs. Rodan, 1956. Rodan, one of Honda's early masterpieces, holds a special place in Toho's Kaiju lineup as their first color monster movie. It's a big deal for rekindling the horror vibe from the original Godzilla, something later Godzilla films kinda lost. The movie doesn't just play with big monster chaos, it also dives into the creeps with Meganulon, these louse-like critters in Rodan's cave. Rodan takes its destruction and horror seriously, setting it apart and above in the Toho monster universe. Released in Japan by Toho on December 26th, 1956, and then in the US in an edited English dubbed version on August 6, 1957. Rodan starts off intense with a string of grisly murders in the Kitamatsu coal mines in Kyushu. Turns out, it's not your average murderer, but a giant prehistoric dragonfly nymphs, the Meganulon. During an extermination attempt, engineer Shigeru Kawamura ends up in a massive cavern and sees something epic: the massive pterosaur Rodan hatching and munching on the Meganulon. Then Rodan kicks off a supersonic spree of destruction across the Far East, and the JSDF is scrambling for a way to stop it. Things ramp up when a second Rodan shows up, and the two team up for a full-on assault on Fukuoka. So, Rodan is a classic example of horror meets sci-fi, showing off some top-notch 1956 practical effects, and setting the bar high for Toho's non-Godzilla monster movies. Mothra, 1961. Mothra, a big name in the Godzilla series, made her debut in her own 1961 flick before clashing with Godzilla in 1964's Mothra vs. Godzilla. She's up there in fame with the likes of King Ghidorah. Mothra's entry brought a touch of fantasy to the Godzilla world, which until then leaned more toward sci-fi. After a typhoon hits near Infant Island, a spot used for atomic tests, a ship gets wrecked. A rescue team finds survivors without radiation sickness, thanks to some juice given by island natives. Reporter Zenichiro Fukada and photographer Michi Hanamura break this wild story. Next up, a joint Japanese Rolisican expedition led by the capitalist Clark Nelson heads to the island. The crew includes radiation expert Dr. Harada, linguist Shinichi Chujo, and reporter Fukada, who snuck in. Chujo's research points to a hieroglyph, Mothra. On Infant Island, they find a jungle with mutated plants, a native tribe, and 2 tiny 12-inch tall women, the Shobijin, who saved Chujo from a nasty plant. The Shobijin ask for no more atomic tests, but Nelson's got other plans. Nelson returns, snatches the tiny women, and makes a killing with a secret fairy show in Tokyo. While he's raking in cash, the Shobijin and natives call for help from their god Mothra, who's chilling in a giant egg. Fukada, Hanamura, and Chujo learn from the Shobijin through telepathy that Mothra's on her way, but warns of innocent people getting hurt. Fukada's paper slams Nelson for kidnapping, but Nelson hits back with a libel suit. Meanwhile, Mothra's egg hatches into a huge caterpillar, making a beeline for Tokyo, destroying a cruise ship and surviving a napalm attack. The Rolisican embassy, however, backs Nelson's ownership of the Shobijin, totally ignoring the rampaging caterpillar's connection to the ordeal. Cloverfield Franchise. The Cloverfield franchise is J.J. Abrams' sandbox, letting him jazz up interesting scripts with a dash of Cloverfield magic and drop them on us in cool ways. It's an effective setup for genre fans, always keeping us guessing what's next. In this universe, if slapping a monster into a story gets more unique and makes the film more character-driven, I'm all for it. It's a smart, budget-friendly way to make and distribute films that might otherwise be overlooked. The 3 Cloverfield movies are a mixed bag, but they each bring something to the table. So, let's not write off the whole series just because of the 3rd film. It's about taking chances on these smaller projects, after all. The first film, Cloverfield, is a found-footage monster horror flick, directed by Matt Reeves and produced by Abrams. It follows a group trying to escape a monster in New York during a farewell party. The viral marketing was key, with a mysterious teaser trailer and online buzz, including MySpace pages for fictional characters and websites for fictional companies mentioned in the film. Then comes 10 Cloverfield Lane, a psychological horror with a sci-fi twist, directed by Dan Trachtenberg. It evolved from a script called The Cellar into a Cloverfield universe film. It's about a woman in a bunker with 2 men claiming the Earth's surface is now uninhabitable. The film switched up the narrative style from its predecessor and got thumbs up from critics, earning over $110 million against a $15 million budget. The third, The Cloverfield Paradox, was a Netflix release, directed by Julius Onah. It was based on the spec script God Particle and became the Cloverfield universe's centerpiece. Set in 2028, it follows astronauts dealing with alternate realities after a particle accelerator mishap. It had a bumpy release schedule and a surprise Netflix drop post Super Bowl. Critics weren't fans, but Paramount said the Netflix move was about quick returns and keeping up with the franchise's mystique. Despite the reception, they assured that future installments would hit theaters. Colossal 2016. Colossal is a unique mashup you wouldn't expect to see. Directed by Nacho Vigalondo, it's a blend of a personal drama and a monster movie, kind of like Rachel Getting Married meets Godzilla. Despite its original concept, the film plays it a bit too safe. It starts off like a cozy indie film. Gloria, an unemployed, alcoholic writer, gets the boot from her boyfriend Tim in New York. She heads back to her hometown, Mainhead, New Hampshire, and reconnects with her childhood pal Oscar, who runs his dad's bar. Oscar offers Gloria a job, which only fuels her drinking problem. Here's where it gets wild though. Gloria discovers she can control the giant monster just by walking through a local playground at 8:05 a.m. She shows this off to Oscar and her friends in Seoul, causing accidental havoc and realizing the serious consequences of her actions. As Gloria tries to make amends, Oscar reveals he can manifest as a giant robot in Seoul. Things get complicated with jealousy and rivalry, especially when Oscar becomes manipulative and destructive. The film touches on themes of self-importance and the contrast between leaving or staying in one's hometown. However, these deeper ideas aren't fully fleshed out. The film's shift from indie drama to sci-fi may be refreshing, but it struggles with flat jokes and a lack of nuance. The final act devolves into an undercooked rivalry and the appearance of a giant robot, leaving some potential unexplored. Gorgo, 1961. In Gorgo, Captain Joe Ryan's treasure-hunting adventure off Ireland's coast goes sideways when a volcano erupts, nearly sinking his ship. He and his buddy, First Officer Sam Slade, limp their ship to Nara Island for repairs. Here they bump into Sean, an orphan who shows them his cool Viking relics collection. One relic, showing a creature named Dogura, the sea spirit, catches Joe's eye. Joe and Sam run into the grumpy harbor master, Mr. McCartan, who's hoarding gold relics from the harbor. Joe's divers explore the harbor, where one surf is freaked out to death. That night, local fishermen face off against a massive creature, fending it off with fire. The plot gets rather twisted when Joe and his crew, with McCartan's reluctant help, snag the beast and put it on their ship. Sean tries warning them it's a bad idea, but no one listens. The creature, now dubbed Gorgo after the mythical Medusa, is sold to Dorkin Circus and taken to London for show. Things take a turn when 2 scientists tell Joe and Sam that Gorgo is just a baby, and its mammoth mom is probably out there. Sure enough, Mama Gorgo shows up, wrecks Nara Island looking for her kid, and sinks a Royal Navy destroyer. Mama Gorgo then hits London, and despite the military's best efforts, they can't stop her. Amidst the chaos, Joe and Sam split to find Sean, with Joe keeping the kid safe. Eventually, Mama Gorgo finds and frees Gorgo, and the sea giants head back home, leaving a relieved but battered London behind. Space Amoeba, 1970. Space Amoeba starts with the Helios 7 space probe headed to Jupiter. Things get funky when a parasitic space amoeba hijacks the probe, which then crashes in the South Pacific. The amoeba hops into a cuttlefish, turning it into the tentacled monster Godzilla, who starts wreaking havoc on ships and islands. It is now that we meet Kudo, a photographer who lands on Selgio Island for a shoot, but their chill photo session is crashed by Godzilla. This creature's not just big and tentacled, it's also a walking freezer. The survivors figure out Godzilla hates heat, so they torch it using an old WW2 bunker. The burnt monster beats a hasty retreat to the water and kicks the bucket, but the amoeba's not done yet. He takes over a stone crab, creating Ganymus, and the cycle of terror continues. This time, the humans outsmarted, blowing up Ganymus in a pit. Still, the amoeba survives and hides in the jungle, ready for round 3. It then controls 2 creatures, another Ganymus and a Matamata turtle called Camebus. They storm the human camp, but Kudo's got a new trick, supersonic waves, unleashing a bat storm. Yes, bats, because why not? Anyway, the amoeba loses its grip on the monsters, no longer controlled. Ganymus and Camebus start duking it out. The humans, not missing a beat, trigger a volcanic eruption, swallowing the space amoeba and the brawling monsters. Dogura, 1964. In Dogura, Japan faces a bizarre threat when TV satellites start vanishing, later found to have collided with mysterious space cells. Meanwhile, Inspector Komai is on a global diamond disappearance case, leading him to crystallographer Dr. Munakata. Things get twisty when Komai, chasing diamond broker Mark Jackson, gets knocked out in Munakata's house, only to wake up and join forces with Munakata and his assistant, Masao Carino. As they try to unravel the mystery, they encounter strange phenomena, like coal being sucked into the sky and sparking clouds. Munakata speculates these sparks might be carbon forms. On the flip side, Jackson, kidnapped by gangsters for his diamond dealings, escapes after outsmarting them. These gangsters, learning about a new diamond shipment, try another heist but end up with fakes. One gangster, Hamako, decides to steal the real deal herself. Komai, piecing things together, suggests that a creature might be behind the coal truck's disappearance, but nobody's buying it. Soon, they learn that Jackson is actually an investigator from the World Diamond Insurance Association. Meanwhile, Carino from the Electric Wave Laboratory reveals that the United Nations Space Planning Committee has identified the space cells as a mutated, jellyfish-like monster named Dogura. Dogura goes on a diamond-eating spree, targeting Munakata's safe. It becomes clear that Dogura is after carbon-based materials. Munakata, sensing a big discovery, heads to the coal mines at Kyushu, predicting Dogura's next move. Jackson tags along. As they reach the mines, Dogura, disturbed by wasps, undergoes a chemical reaction, crystallizing and raining down on the city. The military and scientists, now clued in, start mass-producing artificial wasp venom. As Dogura descends on Dokaiwan Bay, absorbing carbon materials, the military hit it with artillery, causing it to split and target different locations worldwide. The gangsters, still after diamonds, mistakenly think Jackson has stashed them in a safe deposit box. They end up with more fakes and leave Jackson and Komai tied to dynamite, but the duo escapes. As Dogura continues its rampage, the military uses the venom to disintegrate it. The gangsters, caught up in their own mess, are crushed by a crystalline boulder during a clash with the police. With Dogura defeated, Munakata leaves for the UN to discuss the implications of the incident. Director Honda's Dogura brings a unique kaiju tale with a jellyfish-like alien feasting on carbon. While the plot has its quirks, the water-based effects creating Dogura's movements are a highlight, showcasing originality even if they leave some imperfections in the final cut. Frankenstein vs. Baragon, 1965. Frankenstein vs. Baragon, known statewide as Frankenstein Conquers the World, is a wild ride from Honda and Tsuburaya, filled with the kind of kaiju chaos only Toho can deliver. Initially planned as Frankenstein battling King Kong or Godzilla, it switched gears, letting Godzilla tangle with others while Frankenstein faced Baragon, a soon-to-be Godzilla ally. The story starts in WW2 Nazi Germany, where the Nazis snatch Frankenstein's monster's heart and hand it over to the Japanese Navy. They bring it to Hiroshima, but then boom, the nuclear bomb hits. 15 years later, Hiroshima's back on its feet. Enter a wild boy roaming the streets, devouring animals. This catches the eye of Dr. James Bowen and his team, Doctors Sueko Togami and Kenichiro Kawaji. Meanwhile, Kawai, who originally transported the heart, now works at an oil refinery in Akita. An earthquake hits, and he spots a monstrous Baragon lurking in a fissure. Back in Hiroshima, Bowen's team figures out the boy is growing super fast due to his protein diet. They lock him up, but he's given protein-rich food by a sympathetic Suiko. Kawai clues in Bowen that the boy, now dubbed Frankenstein, might have grown from the heart because he was seen in Hiroshima earlier. Kawaji, ignoring advice, tries to chop off Frankenstein's limb to test regeneration theories, but a TV crew botches it, and Frankenstein escapes. He briefly visits Sueco before vanishing. Later, a living hand of Frankenstein's is found, backing up the regeneration theory, but it dies trapped without protein. Meanwhile, Baragon's wreaking havoc, which is wrongly blamed on Frankenstein. The authorities and media are on Frankenstein's tail, but he barely avoids capture. Kawaii pops in again, suggesting Baragon, not Frankenstein, is the real menace. Kawaji remains hopeful they'll save Frankenstein. The War of the Gargantuas, 1966. The War of the Gargantuas, the sequel to Frankenstein Conquers the World, amps up the monster action in true kaiju style. Released just a year after its predecessor, it introduces new monstrous faces following the 1965 film's climax. It's a must-watch for Godzilla and King Kong fans, although I must say that it is filled with some of the campy horror fun. The story starts on a stormy night with a fishing boat facing off against a giant octopus. Suddenly, a green-haired giant humanoid creature, later known as Gyra, jumps in, bashes the octopus, and then turns on the boat. A survivor tells a tale of terror about Frankenstein attacking the boat. This catches the media's attention, which leads them to Dr. Paul Stewart and Dr. Akemi Togawa, who once studied a baby Frankenstein. They're skeptical about their gentle Frankenstein turning hostile and suspect there's more to the story. While confusion reigns, another boat meets a grim fate, and villagers spot the green monster near the coast. Meanwhile, in the mountains, there's a sighting of a different Frankenstein. Stewart and Akemi find giant footprints in the snow, while their colleague, Dr. Majida, finds tissue from the second boat. Things get a tad bit intense when Gyra attacks Haneda Airport, devours a woman, and then ducks out to sea. As the military scrambles to counter this threat, Stewart and Akemi learn that the green monster, Gyra, dislikes light. However, Gyra adapts and becomes bolder, venturing into Tokyo without fear. The War of the Gargantuas has carved a niche in cinema history, influencing icons like Brad Pitt, Quentin Tarantino, Tim Burton, and Guillermo del Toro. It's a testament to the film's impact, showing that even the most outlandish monster tales can leave a lasting impression on movie lovers and makers alike. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, 1953. Up in the Arctic Circle, Operation Experiment, a nuclear bomb test, unexpectedly revives a 200-foot-long carnivorous dinosaur, the Rhedosaurus, from its icy slumber. Physicist Thomas Nesbitt, who witnesses the awakening, gets brushed off as delirious when he tries to warn others. Undeterred, the Rhedosaurus heads south, leaving a trail of chaos along the North American East Coast, sinking ships, smashing a lighthouse in Maine, and wreaking havoc in Massachusetts. Nesbitt, struggling to prove the dinosaur's existence, finally finds allies in paleontologist Thurgood Elson and assistant Lee Hunter, especially after a fisherman confirms the Rhedosaurus sighting. Elson hypothesizes the beast is heading to the Hudson River, historically known for Rhedosaurus fossils. In an underwater search, Elson meets his end inside the jaws of the beast, which soon surfaces in Manhattan. It goes on a rampage, eating a cop, trashing cars, and causing widespread panic, leading to hundreds of deaths and injuries. The military, led by Colonel Jack Evans, tries to halt the dinosaur with an electrified barricade and a bazooka. However, the bazooka shot inadvertently releases a deadly prehistoric contagion from the beast's blood, causing more chaos in New York. So yeah, that was our list of the top 13 Godzilla-less kaiju movies. Which one of these have you watched? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.